Hey everyone, this is Alan and I'm here with Bailey's Books. For a long while I've been wanting to do recommendations for Halloween, and I'm happy to say that this year will be the year. So I've got a number of spooky reads for you. I want to start with Split Scream Volume 3 by Patrick Barb and J.A.W. McCarthy, published in 2023 by Journalstone Press. This is the third volume of a series of double features. Each story is about a novelette in length, which is one of my favorite story lengths. I really like the concept behind this collection, and the title is a great pun. Also of note, each volume has a theme connecting the two stories. So for this one, it appears to be art. But there is also a wild man aspect to the evil in each story. I can't really talk more about that without ruining things, so I'll leave that alone. The first story is called So Quiet, So White by Patrick Barb. I really enjoyed this story, and it was my favorite of the two in this volume. It revolves around Roger Grigsby and his relationship with his grandson, Clint, whom he is taken care of after Roger's son abandons him. That would be also Clint's father. The story begins just after a strange incident at Clint's summer camp. This story is a great mix of atmosphere, character building, and revelation. It managed not to be overly grisly, while the eerie dread heightened on every page. And for me, that is something to note. I appreciate the ability to let my imagination wander without graphic descriptions. An underrated skill in my opinion. The characters are well done and quite developed despite the short number of pages. This might be one of my all-time favorite horror stories. Considering one of my main influences early on is Stephen King, I do not take that lightly. The second story was, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Imago Expulsio, the red animal of our blood. This story was pretty intense. As someone who does not love body horror, this one was a bit tough for me to read. In fact, this was a very physical story in every aspect. There was a good deal of sex in the story too. So again, if you're not into that, I'd be very cautious with this story. The sensual nature of this story is important, and so the sex is too, though it is not overly graphic. Don't come away from this review thinking that this is erotica. It's not. This story revolves around two girls at art school who become lovers and a painting that vomits viscera. Yes, you heard that right. Despite my dislike of body horror, the characters and plot were engaging enough for me to make it through and not regret my choice. The story is well written and interesting. If the body horror doesn't bother you, I'd highly recommend this volume. And if the other volumes are as good as this one, I think they'd be great for any horror aficionado. Check this one out if you like novelettes, stellar story reveals, and eerie atmospherics. Okay, next on the list, A Dance with the Dead by Nuzo Onoh, published 2022 by Stygian Sky Media. If you've listened to the podcast long enough, you know I'm a big fan of Nuzo Onoh's, so it should come as no surprise that I really enjoyed this novel. The story revolves around a conflict between brothers and their father, who also happens to be the king. The king requests that the younger brother, Ife, settle down and stop his partying ways. Of course, this doesn't jive with Ife. He and his best friend, a well-known troublemaker, come up with a plan to distract the king and get Ife off the hook. Of course, the plan goes poorly, leading to mayhem, death, and a visit to the underworld. There are a lot of horrific elements in this novel: ghosts, zombies, demon-like creatures, people being ripped apart, evil witch doctors. I mean, if that doesn't sound like Halloween to you, I don't know what does. But the overarching storyline really reminds me more of the redemption arc of a fantasy story. Prior to this, I've not noticed much humor in her work, but there are laugh-out-loud funny moments, from the situations characters find themselves in to their names. And it's always nice to see a story unfold in a setting I'm not used to, along with the unexpected cultural surprises. The book also had some very nice feminist moments. In fact, I think the book could be read as a satire of masculinity. I highly recommend this book to anyone who is interested in diverse horror, feminist fiction, and freaky ghosts. The next story on our list is Touched by Shadows by Vaughn A. Jackson, published 2021 by Journalstone. I picked this slim volume up at StokerCon 2023 after seeing Mr. Jackson speak at a panel. I really appreciated what he was saying about race issues in cosmic horror. If I were to give an elevator pitch for this book, I'd say it was Stranger Things meets P. Djeli Clark's Ring Shout with a touch of Stephen King thrown in. The plot revolves around a black girl with kinetic powers who has been experimented on by some scientists. In their experimentation, the scientists also accidentally release a demon-like creature who becomes the main villain of the novel. However, the creature is not the only villain. The main character finds herself in a small town that is more sinister than it initially appears, which brings us to the P. Djeli Clark portion of the novel. In other words, a lot of Ku Klux Klan members die. Now to get real for a moment. This is one of those books I really debated on reviewing. While I think this story has good bones, as they say on numerous home repair shows, there are a number of inconsistencies and questionable actions and omissions that kind of took me out of the book a couple times. Believe it or not, this was also one of those rare times when I would have liked to see another 50 pages to patch up some of these issues. Anyone who's been listening to this podcast long enough knows I prefer things short. However, if you're a horror fan who loves those movies that are more interested in the horror, blood, and monsters, I think you'll be able to forgive these indiscretions. All that said, I think Vaughn Jackson has real potential, and he has already published a second longer novel focused on kaiju called Up from the Deep from Severed Press. Check this novel out if you enjoy the deaths of Ku Klux Klan members, mass murdering demons, and girls with kinetic powers. Okay, and this is the last one on the list. Promise by Christi, published 2023 by Flame Tree Press. This is a collection of weird science fiction short stories. And man, is it weird. The stories are often hallucinatory, unwieldy, and strange, sometimes more like portraits than an actual story. They often veer into unsettling images and feelings of chaos and isolation. A few of these stories even expand into what is referred to as bizarro horror. Our contributor Rick Claypool's work is a great example of that. But bizarro refers to very strange stories that can even be considered cartoonish or on the extreme side of surreal. Flexible Off Time is one of these stories. It is about a writer trying to complete a biography of their father using a new technology that allows you to live in your head, turning 5 minutes into days or even weeks. Things do not go well for our protagonist, and the world degrades while she is working. Then things start to get very strange. In The Laughing Head, the protagonist's mother dies, and they get an AI assistant, like Google Home, but in the shape of a head. We decide to upload the mother's voice and appearance to it in order to keep their father company while he was grieving. However, it becomes more and more like the mother, eventually discussing some very surprising spiritual matters. Finally, the last story I'm going to talk about is called Substance. This is one of the most bizarre stories I've read. It's about alien worms who alter their appearance to be more human-like, then reenact a strange, at first incestuous, relationship that evolves more into a servant-master relationship. Like the previous stories, this one focuses on loneliness and isolation in a world of chaos. Pick this one up if you like unsettling, creepy stories, asking WTF, and a short attention span. Alright, well, that's all my reviews for this episode. I hope you all have a fantastic Halloween. If you like what you hear, let your friends and family know. Review us wherever you get your podcasts. We'd really appreciate it. Thanks again, and we'll see you again next time.